Greetings and welcome to the Rural Caucus debate, sponsored by the Utah Association of Counties, being broadcast right now from Richfield High School in Richfield. My name is Chad Booth. I'm the moderator of this event. We start this with an explanation that former Governor Jon Huntsman, due to his health condition, not able to attend this debate. We are sorry that he will miss it, but we do want to let you know that right now we're working to try to arrange a way for his portion of the participation and the other candidates to take place via Zoom, and it will be on the county seat the following week. We'll work towards that goal if we can get everybody together. I want to take a brief minute and cover the rules of the debate. We have randomly selected the person that is going to start the round of questioning. The questions have already been set, and it was by random draw that we selected how it will start. After each person begins, there'll be 2 minutes to answer, and then there'll be 1 minute rebuttal from the other two. After we start the round of questions, we will go clockwise, and we will continue to go clockwise through the event the rest of the night. At the end, we will take a minute for some very quick questions. These may not all make it to the television broadcast, and that is how we make sure that we hit time. So we will start with opening statements. They will be 4 minutes in length. There is a timer, and the random selection, wow, somebody got me a lot of Sharpies. The random selection actually goes to Thomas Wright. He was selected randomly for first. We have a second drawing for the order of questions. So, Mr. Wright, your 4 minutes.
My name is Thomas Wright. It is great to be here tonight, and I want to start off by acknowledging the absence of Governor Huntsman. COVID-19's hit us out of nowhere. It's affected the health of our citizens across this country, and unfortunately it's hit one of our opponents. And I want him and his family to know that I'm thinking about him tonight, that I'll be praying for them, and I wish him a speedy recovery, and I hope he's back on the campaign trail soon. I'm running for governor because I believe that our state is in dire need of new leadership. It's been 16 years that we've had the same people handing the baton of power back and forth to each other, and because of that, we have had some complacency slip in. We've seen the DMV do facial recognition on us without our consent and without people in government knowing. We've seen no bid contracts taking place. We've seen things creep in that are red flags. By having new leadership, by having thoughtful leadership, we can start to correct those situations with new people seeing problems in a new way. Now, I grew up in Utah, and I love Utah. I used to come to Richfield as a child to the 4th of July parade, and I used to catch fish in the gutter by the park. I don't know if they still do that, but we'd build a dam with our hands, and we'd try to catch those trout, and they'd swim by. So I have fond memories of my great-grandma Howard, who lived to be 106 and lived here in Richfield. And I love Utah for that reason, and I love rural Utah. I'm not from rural Utah, and I'm not here to pander to you and pretend that I am. I want to prove to you tonight that you don't have to be from rural Utah to care about rural Utah. I'm from the Wasatch Front, and I know how important rural Utah is to our economy, our lifestyle, our heritage, and our future. And I want to show you that by my command of the subjects that we'll discuss tonight, the ideas that I have. And I just ask you to do me a favor. As we talk about things tonight, I would ask you to listen to my opponents and ask yourself the question. And they're good guys. I like running with them. Ask yourself the question. They've been in government in some of the highest ranking positions in our state. They've been governors and lieutenant governors and speakers of the House. Do the ideas they have, could they have been done while they were in those positions? Or are we just asking for a continuation of more of the same? I'm running because I want a chance. I believe they've had their chance. It's time for someone with new ideas and a fresh perspective and the business background that I have, combined with my political experience. I started a business during the Great Recession. I know what it means to work hard, to get up early, to stay late, to cut budgets, to make ends meet, to collaborate with your employees, to worry about their families, to worry about making a payroll, to worry about making lease payments. And those skills have refined my ability to lead organizations. I also have a lot of political experience. I was the chairman of the Utah Republican Party, twice elected, And I was a member of the Republican National Committee for the last 4 years, where I was elected vice chair by my peers. So I have led in political organizations. Those are all volunteer positions I did at my own time and at my own expense. And they were not publicly elected positions. They were privately elected positions. But they taught me how the political system works, how the legislative process works. And I chose my running mate based on that. I chose Congressman Bishop because he lives in rural Utah, he understands rural Utah, he fights for rural Utah, and when he does so, he wins. A Thomas Wright Congressman Bishop ticket will fight for rural Utah. We will be here with you in the trenches. We will not delegate it to a chief of staff or to somebody in our cabinet. We will come and we will listen to you and we will collaborate. So ask yourself the question tonight when you hear the ideas. Could those have been done before? Why are we just hearing about them now? Why are they just important now? And ask yourself the question, is it time for new leadership in the state of Utah? I'm Thomas Wright. I'm a proven conservative. I'm a pro-Second Amendment, pro-life conservative, and I'm ready to be your next governor, and I look forward to tonight.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be here with you tonight. I echo Mr. Wright's sentiments with our colleague who is not on the stage with us tonight, to former Governor Huntsman, his family, his staff members. We pray for you and we wish you a very speedy recovery. We want to have you back on the stage soon. Now, it's really nice to be on a stage that is not on the Wasatch Front. It's a little closer to home for me. For those of you that don't know me, I was born and raised in the small town of Fairview on a farm that my great-great-grandfather settled over 160 years ago. We've been there ever since. We don't get out much, but I wanted to get out, and so I married a girl all the way from Mount Pleasant, which was 6 miles away. We went to high school together. My wife Abby was born and raised on a ranch in Mount Pleasant, and we swore we would leave and never come back. We made it all the way to Ephraim, to Snow College, and then we made it to Utah State University. After attending law school, I went to work for a big law firm in Salt Lake. It didn't take us long, though, after the birth of our third son, to realize that something was missing. It was a bumper sticker that changed everything for us. It was a bumper sticker that said it's 99% of attorneys that give the other 1% a bad name. After my wife explained the joke to me, I asked her if the world was a better place because of what I was doing. And she said, as only a farm girl from Sanpete could, absolutely not. And that started a very important discussion in our household. And we decided it was time to move back to the farm in Sanpete County and raise our 3 boys. I had a chance to work for the telecommunications company that my great-grandfather started in 1911. Excuse me, in 1919. And during that time, my job was to figure out what to do when we no longer had telephones on the walls. We decided that we would invest everything we could in high-speed internet and fiber optic deployment in rural Utah and on the Wasatch Front, and that's exactly what we did. Centricom, as many of you know it here in Sevier County, it started to thrive, and we doubled in size during the Great Recession. Shortly after moving back, a friend of mine came to me and said, "Hey, we have a vacancy on the city council, and we've decided that we would like to appoint you to fill that vacancy." I was flattered and asked him why he thought I would be good, and he said, "Well, we don't, but it's your turn." That's kind of how we do things in rural Utah. We also have a big legal problem, and we can't afford an attorney. We were hoping you would do free legal work for us if we ask you to serve on the city council. And that's how I got started in politics. I got a chance to serve as a mayor, as a county commissioner with many of you. Got elected to the legislature, the House of Representatives, and then 9 months later got asked by Governor Herbert to serve as his lieutenant governor when Greg Bell resigned. It was a very difficult decision for us because we knew we were not going to leave Fairview. It was important that my kids curse my name just as I cursed my dad's as they're up moving pipe. And yes, we still have hand lines that they have to move every morning and every night. It's good for the soul. And so I told the governor I would, if I said yes, I would be staying in Fairview. He agreed to let that happen, and for the last 6.5 years, I've been able to commute 200 miles round trip just about every day. It's been the honor of a lifetime to serve you. It's been the honor of a lifetime to represent rural Utah. Now, the governor came to me over a year ago and said, "I've decided not to run for governor, and I want you to run." and my wife and I talked about it. We ultimately decided that we would do it, but we wanted to do things differently. We made a commitment. We never had candidates for governor come to Fairview. So we committed then and there that we would visit all 248 cities and towns in Utah. I'm pleased to announce that we've made it to 215, and we'll be finishing up over the next 2 weeks. It's been incredible to visit with people in their communities all across the state in every corner. My commitment to you is, as your next governor, as the first rural governor we've had in decades, that I will not forget rural Utah, that we will make important changes. Some of those we'll talk about tonight, that will represent Utah and change Utah for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker Hughes.
Thank you, Chad, and I've heard it twice, but you got to say it. You love it when the competition's high, when the bar is high. We have a great open seat for governor, and I wish our friend, former Governor Jon Huntsman, well, and wish he were here, and I look forward to seeing him come back. He can't miss too many of these. He's gonna have to get better quick and be with us. So let me just say this: thank you everyone for being here. I love rural Utah, and let me tell you why. There is just plain speak here. I have been talking about a trip. I had 45 trips around this whole state in January and February and the first part of March. And then we went into that house arrest mode we all entered into. It's like a bad James Bond movie where we couldn't go outside. We couldn't meet anybody. We're talking through telephones and TV cameras or film cameras. Got back out in May, and we've had another 35 town hall meetings. Let me tell you about Richfield. I was at a local leaders breakfast. Guy raised his hand and he said, I've been listening to you candidates running for governor since Rampton, and you're all falling in love with rural Utah. And one of you gets elected and we never see you again. So why are you any different? Now, that's the short version and maybe the more polite version of that question. And at first when he was asking me, I was getting kind of defensive. I'm thinking, well, we do higher ed, we do roads. I mean, I think we do some stuff, and I'm thinking. But then I listened and I realized he was right. So I just, with a straight question, I gave him a straight answer. You don't have the math to elect a governor. 80% of Utah's population lives in 4 counties out of 29. So if you're wondering why a governor is spending all their time in 4 counties, that's where they're going to get elected. They're not getting elected out here. I said, but here's where it's different. You have 4 counties now that are jam-packed. It's full. It's a valley. There's mountains. You can't sprawl like Dallas-Fort Worth. The congestion failure gets worse by the day. The cost of living is going up because there's a scarcity of housing. And I can tell you, and I can report to you, that there are 80% of Utah's population in 4 counties, they've had it. They don't want to grow. The corporate expansion, relocation, more population, more infrastructure, everybody's pushing back. You need a governor that can connect the dots with all those people, all the people that live in the Wasatch Front, and say, your prosperity, your quality of life, your cost of living depends on the rest of this state seeing prosperity and opportunity maybe for the first time. So one of the things I'm hoping we talk about tonight is infrastructure. The state leading the way, not leaving you out on your own to try and create it. Water, rail, roads, fiber optics. You need a state that already does bond for infrastructure, focusing it on places that should have been doing it a long time ago. That's what you get with me as governor. I've been with you. We rescinded and drastically reduced these monuments that Democrat presidents make. Clinton made with Staircase Escalante, Obama made with Bears Ears. We fought and made sure that our president came back, President Trump, and rescinded those. First time in American history a president came into a state and did it, and we're a little state. He sticks up for the little guy and gal, and I'm proud to state it. My time, I thought I only had 3 minutes. I got another minute. I'm swimming. I'm swimming in time.
This debate was meant for you, Craig.
I know, I love it. So, and you're cutting into my time. Chad, give me extra time here. So, let me just tell you this. We preserve your roads. Thanks to Representative Mike Noel, who came in with me. We've been fighting to preserve your roads to make sure that they're not getting taken by the federal government. I'll tell you this, the Constitutional Defense Council, which we fund every year, and we really gave it some teeth in the time I was on the clock and I was speaker. It's amazing to me, and you have to educate the Wasatch Front lawmakers, that the efforts to try and encumber more roads and more of your land happens every single day. We funded the Constitutional Defense Council. We put that in place to make sure that you have a voice and that we are pushing back, and we're seeing great success from that. So let me just tell you this. The sky's the limit for this state, but it's going to take hard work. I and Victor Iverson, County Commissioner from Washington County, he understands local government. We together as a team, we can get it done for you, and when we get done for you, we get it done for this whole state.
You got your extra few seconds back.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate that.
Okay, we are now going to begin the questioning as set to do. We also pulled numbers out of the hat for this round of questioning as we go through the questions for the next hour and 10 minutes. The name that got pulled out of the hat to start is Greg Hughes. So, here we go. President Clinton and President Obama put nearly 4 million acres of land under monument designation. That totals nearly 13% of the state's landmass. Many valuable resources were locked up as a result. President Trump reversed this decision, downsizing Bears Ears and the Grand Staircase National Monument as a result of a strong grassroots effort. If Trump's decision is reversed, will you defend the downsizing that has taken place under President Trump?
How much time do we have?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. With every breath I have, I would do that. I'm very proud of what we did. When that monument was created by President Obama from Hawaii with a picture of the Arches National Park in his tweet, talk about disconnect of encumbering land and telling a community, a small rural community, that they aren't good stewards of the land, that they couldn't take care of it, that it required further encumbrance from the federal government. We came down the day that that was announced, and we were on Main Street there in Monticello, and I promised the people, and the people were emotional. This went from an issue that was very factual for me to an emotional issue. And we promised them that I as the speaker would come off that dais and run the resolution, asking our new president, President-elect Trump, to rescind this. We had that resolution as well as the Staircase Escalante resolution. We took that back, it passed. We took it back to Washington, D.C. We even had a Heritage Foundation panel showing all the conservatives in these think tanks about the circumstances we labor under as a state with federal control and management of land and what they continue to do. This president came back in less than a calendar year and came back and rescinded those in a significant and important way. We can never lose that ground. If you have a governor, 50, there's only 50 in this country, you need a governor that's going to lean in on these issues. And really, have you ever thought about the conservative governors of our country? I think about the conservative governor in Wisconsin, Scott Walker. He didn't deal with national issues, but the state issues he dealt with, I paid attention to. I saw what he did. We need in Utah a governor that's going to lean in on these federal lands issues if anyone tries to reverse what this good president did for our state and for those lands. I would fight that, and I would make sure all states, all citizens, and our administration and our Congress are well aware of the injustice it would be to do it. And really, we need to have a deeper conversation about these national monuments and if they're really doing what Teddy Roosevelt originally intended.
Speaker Wright, 1 minute to respond.
Speaker Wright, I like that sound of that.
Oh no, Chairman Wright.
Oh, it's okay. It's all right, Chad. We all get a little, well, anyway, I'm wasting my time.
It's stage fright.
No, you never do. That's the thing about
He's
you,
20
Chad.
seconds into this answer. I don't know.
See, this is Hughes right here, a little passive-aggressive. We love that about you, Greg.
It's
Okay.
aggressive-aggressive.
Maybe not so passive sometimes. Anyway, yes, I will defend the president's decision. I was honored to be backstage with the president when he came to sign that at the Capitol. We had a nice chat about it. He's an engaging man. He fought for us in Utah. I want to thank Senator Hatch and Congressman Bishop, who spearheaded that effort to roll back Bears Ears and Escalante National Monument. They were instrumental in Washington, D.C., and that is one of the reasons I picked Congressman Bishop to be on my team, to be our lieutenant governor, because he will continue the fight for public lands. He has more federal experience and more experience with public lands than all of the governor and lieutenant governor candidates combined. He will advocate for us, he will watch out for us, and when needed, he will go to Washington, D.C. because he knows how to navigate Washington, D.C., having been there as an effective congressman. We need to constantly take the fight to the federal government. We can never give up on that, and if they try to change that, I will be there to defend it.
Okay, Lieutenant Governor Cox.
Well, if I could, I'll just take off where Speaker Hughes finished. He mentioned Teddy Roosevelt. The purpose behind the Antiquities Act was to protect antiquities, right? Not to lock up millions of acres of land. It has been abused by presidents, especially Democrats, over the past several years for their own benefit, for their own fundraising, for their own purposes, not for the benefit of the people of the states and not for the benefit of the people of the United States. President Barack Obama used the Antiquities Act 34 times during the time that he was president. And Utah was the pincushion that they used, again, to raise money with their environmentalist friends. We know better. We have to defend that. President Trump was the first president in history to reduce the size of a monument. It was a historic opportunity, and we have to stand shoulder to shoulder as a state, every one of us, making sure we defend that decision that he made, that we never go back, and we have to change the Antiquities Act. We just do.
Okay, on to the next question. And so if this will be for you to take, Chairman Wright. Where do you stand on Washington, D.C. permanently funding the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which would allow the federal government to continue to take private land off the tax rolls and add to the public estate? And what will you do to halt such action in the state of Utah?
Oh, we have to fight against this, Chad. This is a great question. They're taking federal government money, they're coming in and they're buying up more land as if they needed more. And when they do that, they take taxes away from local citizens. They're hurting our schools, they're hurting our local communities, they're hurting rural Utah. I am uncomfortable with that, especially in a country where, or in a state rather, where so much of our land is owned and controlled by the federal government. We cannot allow that unintended consequence that they continually push forward on to come in and buy our land, because when they do, they get control of our land, they get control of our water, and it damages our rural communities. As governor, I will fight against this. I will push back against this. We need more local control, not less. And we need to make sure that we have properly funded county governments and municipalities. You in rural Utah are sorely underfunded, and you're underfunded because of the overreach of the federal government. They take your public lands, or they've taken them, they buy them under the act that you're referencing, and then what do? They pay no taxes on them. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound fair to me. They call it payment in lieu of taxes. It's pennies in lieu of trillions, as it's referred to in rural Utah. We cannot allow them to continue to take land and then not pay us a fair market value. Anybody who owns land in our state should pay us a fair market value like we do as citizens, like we do as business owners, so that we can properly educate our kids and not constantly be behind the 8 ball. But the federal government continues to overreach, Chad, and because they overreach, they disadvantage us. And those bureaucrats and environmental lobbyists in Washington, D.C., who have weaponized this act through environmental groups, are strategically taking more and more of our land to lock it up and to keep us off of it. We need access to our public lands. We need to make sure that we can have responsible commerce on our public lands, and we need to make sure that we're compensated for our lands so that we can properly run our government, educate our kids, and build the infrastructure that we need in rural Utah to grow.
Okay, 1 minute to you, Lieutenant Governor.
So I need 4 minutes on this one, but I'll try to make it short. And everything Thomas Wright just said is absolutely correct. Let me just maybe focus on education for just a second. You hear all the time that we are 50th in the nation for per pupil spending, and we are, but there's a reason for that. One of those is that we have lots of kids, and that's a good thing. That's a very positive thing. We're really good at it here in Utah. But the real reason is in most states they pay for education with property taxes. When the federal government owns 70% of your state and wants to earn more or own more, you can see where we have such a disconnect. It's not that we don't care about our kids. It's not that we don't want to fund our kids. In fact, when you look at effort, the amount we actually pay per household to fund our kids' education, we're near the top in the country. What's happening is because of the federal government not paying their fair share for these lands that they own, we are unable to give our kids the world-class education that they deserve. And that's on the federal government, and how dare they come and try to take more of our land.
Okay.
Thank you, Chad. Look, everything you've said I concur with, both Thomas Wright and Spencer Cox. Let me just say this. Let's just talk about the irony here. Payment in lieu of taxes, pennies in lieu of trillions, okay? At the same time that they don't even begin to pay the fair market value or the value of the land that they encumber, they want to allocate, Congress wants to allocate more money to encumber more of that land. It's insanity. But let me tell you why they're getting away with it. Because you have an organized, highly organized environmental network of advocates, well-heeled, well-funded attorneys, you name it. They come after this state, they come after you and your communities every single day. When we have a census and you see our community sadly in rural Utah shrinking, and your representatives of state senators and representatives shrinks and they have to represent greater land areas or greater jurisdictions because it's shrinking, that is not by accident. There are people working every day to make that happen. As governor, we're going to flip the script on that. We're going to make sure that you have economies, you grow, and we're not letting them encumber more land. We're going to get our land back.
Okay, our next question goes to Lieutenant Governor Cox. Would you support a court challenge to the Federal Lands Policy Management Act, FLPMA, and the land retention policy that came with it? And most importantly, how would you do it?
Well, so the answer is yes. I mean, that's an easy one. Look, this is FLPMA, NEPA, all of these regulatory things that were put into place by past administrations and by past congressional acts have just decimated what's happening here in our state and in the West in general. In order for these types of lawsuits and these challenges to be successful, though, we need help. We can't just do this on our own. Now, again, having an administration that is supportive, and by the way, there are changes being made. One of the most important things that's never talked about, you never see this in the media, that the president has been able to do is to roll back some of these regulatory constructs that have been put in place, like FLPMA, like NEPA, and is allowing us to get some things done. But the problem is, even when we do have these laws in place, they're not being followed the way that they were intended to do. We've worked very hard to have local management resource plans in place. In fact, for 20 years, we tried to get it done. We were finally able to do that in our administration. And the federal government has to work with us. I mean, the law says they have to work with us when they're making these decisions. And far too often, it's just not happening. They don't listen to us. Even when we have an administration that is favorable, an administration that supports the things that we believe in, it's still not happening at the local level because far too often, and we have some great people that work for these agencies here in this state, don't get me wrong, but we have a few that get transferred here that are in charge that aren't so easy to work with. And they were maybe appointed by another administration. And so we have to be able to stand up. We have to get other states to support us and work together. We have a wonderful relationship right now with governors and lieutenant governors across the West. We can use that in a way that will allow us to be successful in these challenges and allow us to get back to business and remove these regulatory burdens that are impacting our state.
Okay.
So in 1976, FLPMA was passed by Congress. Let me tell you, this is an unconstitutional act the day they passed it. What it did is it said, look, we used to have territories, we made them states, and then we would dispose of the land, transfer the land as per the contract, the way it worked. 1976, Congress said, we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to leave the federal lands where they are. They're going to be managed. We're not going to transfer any longer. We're not going to even contemplate the effort. We are not being treated fairly under the law as other states are. This FLPMA Act, unconstitutional as it is, it has prevented us from growing. It's a form of gerrymandering when we can't get a water line on water from the Colorado River that we're entitled to with a 4-state compact because we got to get over that federal land which is encumbered with lawsuits and everything else. This FLPMA Act, as unconstitutional as it is a gerrymandering and keeping this population from growing, preventing you from prospering. Here's the answer. You go to the U.S. Supreme Court. You make this case. We have the makeup of a court to have this deemed and ruled as unconstitutional, but then you got to go work with Congress to find a way that they'll put in place to get these lands transferred back to a state and state management.
Well, it's all been said. It's hard to go last, but let me just flat out say that all these acronyms that are thrown at us by a federal government is nothing more but manipulation. Manipulation to control our public lands, to take our rights away. And it doesn't matter if it's RFS 2477 or the acts that were passed in 1976 to repeal them. It worked for 110 years where we had control of our federal lands and we could build roads and we could access things, and then they came in after 110 years and took it away. And what they did when they did that is they gave no formal admin or judicial process in order for us to appeal to them to use the public lands. And so they left us high and dry, and it's a classic case of what the federal government does. What we need to do in the state of Utah is we need to have a strong governor that works with the federal delegation, that uses the Public Lands Administration and every resource available to push back against the federal government every chance we get, because it's in a federal government that will take our land, they'll try to control our land. We know what's best in our local economies, we know what's best in our local counties, and the federal government should allow us to have local control of our lands.
Excellent. Okay, we go to the next question. This goes to Speaker Hughes. How would your administration address the iniquities brought about by PILT, the payment in lieu of taxes, or pennies in lieu of trillions, as has been so cleverly stated here, and the holding of federal lands in our state? So how do we fix the iniquities of PILT? You have 2 minutes.
Okay, we've been circling this, we're talking. It's a great conversation. I love this debate. We're really getting into the deep grass on some critical issues, and we don't get this opportunity all the time. Usually it's commercials and things like that. Payment in lieu of taxes, pennies in lieu of trillions, is something that the longer we allow the federal government to do it the way they've been doing it, we create a precedent, a very dangerous precedent, because we have not pushed back. We have not sought relief from the courts. We've not said this is unacceptable. With technology, thankfully, in 2020 and going forward, there is incredible software out there that is beginning to archive, inventory, and assess the value of this land in a way that we've never seen before. As a lawmaker all these years, I had no idea there were federal lands well within political jurisdictions of cities along the Wasatch Front. I did not know this. We are starting to understand the true inequity. We've always known it's pennies in lieu of trillions, but we've never known how severe this inequity is, and how those dollars inside of areas that could very quickly, especially inside of municipalities along the Wasatch Front, could be transferred to state management. All of those things are things that we are staring at now, but I will promise you this, just like the last answer that I shared, it doesn't come without opposition. It doesn't come without a lot of attorneys trying to stop you at every turn. You need a governor that is willing to lean in on the hard issues, to be willing to be attacked, having the media tell you that what you're doing is wrong and paint you in the worst terms, having social media attack you, having special interest groups threaten your reelection. You got to be able to lean into those things. I've done that while I've been on the clock as the Speaker of the House. I've done it for rural Utah. I've done it for the whole state. That's what you're going to need to take this issue and push. Because really, I'm going to tell you about PILT right now. Federal government needs to either pony up, or they need to send it back to us to let us start managing this land, being able to manage our own destiny, as every other state in the union gets to do. We're going to make this a fork in the road very quickly, and I'm the governor that can make that happen.
Okay, Thomas, you got a minute.
There's very little a governor can do about PILT. We can fight for it, we can talk about it, but let me tell you something. You talk to anybody in Congress and they'll tell you they don't listen very well to governors. So what we need to do is we need to have a more surgical plan, a more strategic plan to get our public lands back. There are 217,000 acres of public land, either in our municipalities or in a 1-mile radius around them. And this is kind of ironic because some of the people in Park City that are a little more liberal on this issue, once upon a time there was a little piece of public federal land right in the middle of Park City, and people were squatting on it, and the city couldn't do anything about it. And guess what? They came to Congressman Bishop and said, can you help us solve this problem? And Congressman Bishop entered into a land swap where that now is part of Park City where they can enforce the laws. So even liberals in Park City will understand the challenge we have with public lands. We need to make sure that we're going and saying, let's start with those 217,000 acres and say, we want those lands back. They're important to our economic development. Let's make it happen. In Manaway, Congressman Bishop did a land swap to build a cemetery. In Nephi, he did one so they could build a firehouse. There's all these little parcels of land. Let's start around the cities and then work out so that we can actually make progress on this issue.
Okay.
What they said. 217,000 acres. So Ken Ivory and his team have been doing this project, a study that just recently came out, and I hope you all get a chance to see that looks at the value of these lands and what it means to the people of the state of Utah. Let me just share one other piece of this that just blew me away. We mentioned about 70% of the state is owned by the federal government. If you just take the private property here in the state and the amount of taxes paid, property taxes paid on those lands, so 20+%. We pay in 6 days the same amount that the federal government pays per year for the other 70%. That's mind-boggling, and it shows you that disparity that is so big. Now, our friends, our governors on the East Coast and the Midwest, they don't get this at all because they have 93, 95% of their land is privately held. It's an issue that they really don't understand, and it makes it a challenge at the federal level.
Okay. We move on to our next question, and this goes to Thomas. Utah is engaged in lawsuits on over 20,000 RS 2477 roads. The court battle has gone on for years without resolution. Specifically, how will each of you work to resolve this issue with your administration?
Well, I hit on this a little earlier, and I'm glad this question came up because this is so important to counties that are affected by it. And I said it earlier, but RS 2477 was working well for 110 years. Then in 1976, the federal government came in, pulled the rug out from under us. Now there's tons of lawsuits and land and roads, 12,500 right-of-ways that are affected roads. It's a huge problem, and we've got to make sure that we have a plan on this because we have to win this fight. We cannot be told by the federal government that we can't access those roads anymore and get locked off of our public land. It's too important to mining. It's too important to hunting. It's too important to traveling. It's too important to the way of life for multi-generations of Utahns. So what we have to do is we have to do 4 things when it comes to RS 2477. So I want to be really specific about this. Number 1, we need to confirm that state and counties are the owners of the right-of-ways. We need to fight for that until we win. We cannot give up on that. We own those right-of-ways, and we need to fight until we make that happen. 2, we need to allow counties to make local decisions about road maintenance. We should be able to maintain those roads once we've asserted our right and claim to them. 3, we need to ensure public access to those lands for recreation and enjoyment and hunting and all the things that I outlined before. And 4, we need to preserve local transportation networks for local economies. It's too important to them to have the federal government come in after all these years and have the environmental lobbyists who've never, in some cases, been out and seen what they're talking about, lock us off our public lands and close those roads and those right-of-ways. As governor, I understand this issue. I know how important it is to people. I spent hours on this in Kane County. I will continue to be a student of it. I'll be an advocate for you. And as governor, I will take this fight to the federal government. I will be there every step of the way. And the state of Utah, under my leadership, will defend our state's rights to the roads and right-of-ways that have been taken away.
Excellent. Spencer, you have a minute.
Yeah, so let me just tell you, maybe better to give you an update because all of this is already happening. So where we are right now, by the way, as a Sanpete County Commissioner, I help map the roads in our county that are part of this litigation. And it's the litigation process. It's federal litigation. It's very slow, unfortunately, but we are closer than we've ever been before. So what the courts have done now is they've looked at all these thousands and thousands of roads, and they've selected samples for basically a test case. And every one of those sample cases, so if you can imagine buckets of roads that all kind of have similar characteristics, and then we're litigating right now, and I'm the chair of the Constitutional Defense Council, working with the Attorney General's office, we are in the middle of this litigation. Unfortunately, the coronavirus has slowed this down a little more. We were ready to go to trial, and that's pushed us back a little bit, but we're very close. And what we're doing is the judge will decide on every one of these buckets of roads, will give us a final determination, and then that will, I'm sure, be appealed to the 10th Circuit and then eventually to the Supreme Court. There's not much we can do outside of that, but I want you to know that it is moving forward and we hope to have it resolved soon.
Okay, Greg, you have the last word on this.
Yeah, that's right, 20,000 lawsuits. You've got RS 2477 roads. I championed with members of the House and members of the legislature to fight for the funding to be able to legally push back on this. When we talk about that Constitutional Defense Council, it's in a budget. We fought for that. We put that in place. I heard that the governors can't make a difference when they're working with the federal government. How about speakers of the House? Okay, we did make a difference. We have pushed. We have made progress with the federal government, even from a perch like being Speaker of the House. It's important to know that these issues are continuing, but we can't let up. We have to make sure, as it's been described, these lawsuits won't go away. We have to have them well funded. There's high competition for funds and resources, especially as we're staring at great shortfall because there's no economic activity happening for tax collection to occur. But these efforts have to continue to be funded, and I think for the first time in a long time, Utah has some big guns legally as we push forward and preserve these roads. So that's happening, and that's a good thing.
Okay. We go to the next question. The United States Forest Service always says that they can't sell timber because they claim nobody bids on the sale. However, loggers and mills claim that this is the size and number of timber sales that create the problem, and they can't sustain timber, and so hence the infrastructure has moved away. What do we do to effectively add logging back into the mix to help maintain our forests, keep wildfires down, and actually create a new industry that helps rural Utah? And Spencer, this is your question.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. So this is something I'm very passionate about. By the way, the loggers and the mills are right. The federal government says this all the time. They say, hey, look, we're holding these timber sales and nobody bids on them. Well, there's a reason. If you're opening a business, you have to know that the supply is going to be there, right? You have to be able to invest in your business. Capital is a coward. It's not going to go someplace where you don't know tomorrow if you're actually going to have the stuff you need to keep your business open. And so it's disingenuous of the federal government and the Forest Service to say those things when they know they are the root of the problem. And so there's a couple things that we have to do there. And by the way, Chad, you and I went on a four-wheeler ride once, and I took you up to show you the beetle kill that was happening on the Manti-La National Forest. Talk about mismanagement, devastation, fire hazards, environmental hazards. If you want to talk about clean air, let's not have these massive forest fires because we're not treating our forests the way they need to be treated. That beetle kill, we could have gone in, we could have logged that out, we could have created hundreds of jobs here in the state of Utah, we could have created a new industry, and we could have saved those forests. And instead, what did we do? We did absolutely nothing. And the forest has rotted away, and now it burns, and it causes all kinds of problems for us. So the things we have to do. First of all, we need to continue to work with this administration to understand that there has to be some assurances so that we can actually invest in these new industries. Second of all, we are constantly incentivizing, and I've been very vocal about this, we're incentivizing businesses and industries to come to the Wasatch Front, where they have a hard time finding employees, where it's getting crowded, where land is incredibly expensive. We should be using those incentives for opportunities like this to help start these nascent industries, and by the way, they're not new, they're old industries that got run off by the federal government, so they can come back, we can use our lands and create jobs for the people of rural Utah.
Okay, Greg, your first rebuttal, 1 minute.
Okay, so let me just say to that comment, I just want to point out, I've heard, Spencer Cox, I've heard you talk about the concerns or frustrations about GOA, Governor's Office of Economic Development, and what they incentivize. You're on the clock. You're part of that executive branch, and you can, these good ideas you're presenting tonight, I think they should be, but the time is wasting. You have access to and a position of power as Lieutenant Governor that you could implement these things right now. You're on the clock. I will tell you, it is a crime. It should be a crime. To have a lumber yard, to have a commitment, to have a contract with the Forest Service, believing that you do have lumber, that you have a stream of business, and have them yank those contracts right out from under you. And then, as been described, piecemealed and said, okay, we'll do a little bit here. Hey, nobody bids because we don't do it here. They are the worst business partner you could imagine, because not only do they not tell you in a supply and a long-term way you can budget what you can do, they have broken contracts. They have had people invest to be able to do these things and taken those away from them. The management and the communication has to improve.
Thomas?
I once, not too long ago, pre-pandemic, sat in a cafe in Wayne County and looked up at the Boulder Mountain, which I'm really excited about because after 22 years of putting in for limited entry bull elk, I drew the tag. And I looked up at that mountain then, not knowing if I'd draw this year, but 22 years I thought was long enough, don't you think, sir? I've been putting in since Bill Clinton was president. But anyway, I looked up at that Boulder Mountain with this commissioner, and he told me stories about mills that have been put out of business and the devastation of this particular policy and these policies in rural Utah. The plan that you referenced calls for cutting down dead trees that are greater than 8 inches in diameter, leaving all the living spruces, and making sure that we clean up the forests in a responsible way. Idaho has done a particularly good job in partnering with the Forest Service and making sure that they have a good partnership. I think we can model and learn from that, but we've got to make progress on this in Utah, not just from an economic standpoint, but from a fire safety perspective, a wildlife management perspective, and from a local economic perspective. We must do better, and there are plans and there are ideas out there that we can make happen.
Okay, very good. On to the next question. Greg, this goes to you. You have 2 minutes. The governor came out with a 25,000 jobs by 2025 plan. To date, several counties feel that little results have been measured. They feel that they've got little direction and little help. What would you change to make economic development work for rural Utah and provide living wages?
Thank you, Chad. I'm just going to come clean right now. I am not a governor that you'll hear very many announcements of blue ribbon panels, especially if I'm targeting a date that's well after my time of service is long gone. It's nice to say there's 25,000 jobs by year 2025 if you're never around at count for having succeeded or failed at that goal. I think that's political pageantry, and I think it's done at your expense, and I don't like it. I think that when you have that big press conference and you want to make sure everyone feels good about it, but then when it comes to the actual implementation of it, all any county commissioner I've spoken to has said is the executive branch said, oh, what do you have for us? What can you do? What's your plan? Well, they didn't need to have a big blue ribbon panel to just point the finger back at them and ask what their plan was. It was, again, pageantry at its worst. This is what we need to do, and it's what I talked about in the opening of this debate. We have to bring infrastructure to your community. You have to have rail. You got I-70 sitting right here. We have to see this U.S. custom bonded inland port system throughout the state of Utah in regions. If you know, and we do know, that inland ports east of the Mississippi or east of the Rockies of the United States and all over the world where there's major ports, have for logistics solutions rail that comes from those ports where you see an ecosystem of economic activity. How in the world can the state of Utah, which has rail from every single West Coast port that finds its way into the state of Utah somewhere, how do we not see us become a literal link in the global supply chain and do that right away? 2 years, folks, 4-year term in the 24th month. We will have the first of a system of U.S. custom bonded ports, not year 2025, but in 24 months. I asked Jack Hedge, he's the executive director of the Utah Inland Port Authority, which I worked very hard as leaving as speaker to make sure we put in statute. Can we do it? It can be hard, but can we do it? I don't want to lie. He said it'd be really hard, but we could do it. That's my commitment to you, and it's not a blue ribbon panel when we do it.
Okay, Thomas.
They say you can say anything if you smile, so I'm going to smile, and then I'm going to say what I have to say on this issue. Rural Utah has been totally left behind. And the telecommuting jobs are great, and it's great lip service, and I'm sure it'll provide some jobs, and that'll be fantastic, but you cannot rebuild your economy on that alone. You need infrastructure, you need manufacturing jobs, you need economic diversification in your rural communities. You're not getting it. You need an executive branch that will show up and be here. Governor Wright is passionate about rural Utah. I hope you can feel that. I'm not running for this job because I need a job or because I need to continue my political career. I'm running for this because I want to help solve problems like this. As I've met with your local leaders, I have learned that they know exactly what they need to diversify Utah's economies. They just need a great partner to make it happen. It's complex. You need water, you need roads, you need broadband, and then you need somebody that can go recruit these companies and bring them to Utah. It's complicated. You need a very experienced business executive to make this happen, and I will.
Okay, Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are so lucky to have incredible representation from rural Utah. We have some right here in the audience, Representative Owens, Representative Albrecht, Senator Okerlund, and we have worked together over the past few years to pass some very important legislation that is helping rural Utah and will continue to help rural Utah. The high-cost infrastructure tax credit, I'm trying to remember the name of the other, the outdoor recreation infrastructure fund. All of these things are making a big difference. But here's the most important thing. Coming out of this coronavirus crisis, we are going to see a renaissance in manufacturing here in the United States. Our supply chains are broken in China. What we're going to be able to do with the inland port, and by the way, we're going to have a hub and spoke model for the inland port so that rural Utah gets that same infrastructure, so that we get to participate in this modern economy. It's coming, and rural Utah is the best situated to take advantage of that because we have the best employees, because we have cheap land, because we have access to power and the things that we need to make manufacturing happen.
Thank you. For those of you who are just tuning in for this broadcast, you're watching the Rural Caucus Governor's Debate, sponsored by the Utah Association of Counties, taking place in Richfield High School. We'll continue our questioning. This one goes to Thomas Wright, who is, I'm sure, poised at the ready. The Rural Online Initiative is one of only a handful of state-funded programs to see results in less than a year. Do you support the ROI, and would you be willing to include it in the governor's budget during your administration?
Yes, anything that's working, we're going to continue to do. And that's a softball, Chad. I appreciate that question. But we need to identify more ways to do exactly what's working. And we need to jettison the things that aren't, and a lot of things are not working, right? And that's why I'm so passionate about this. The things that are working, we want to continue to do. We want to build on our successes. Utah has been in a successful state, but rural Utah is struggling. And all I hear, and I said this at the beginning, I wanted you to look and say, if all of these ideas are here, why didn't they get implemented in the greatest run-up in Utah's economic history? Now we find ourselves in a pandemic, in a recession, and our budget's going to be $2 billion or more short, they estimate. We need to make sure that we have leadership on these issues. We've got to find ways to get jobs to rural Utah. It isn't going to happen by talking about it, and it's not going to happen by committee. It's going to happen when an executive branch sits down with local leaders and says, what can we do to help? Local leaders know what's needed. We need to continue to do the things that are working, and we need to build on those and identify new opportunities. And I'll just close this by saying, look, I have traveled these counties, and I have been to all of them multiple times, and I have met with local leaders. And I can't tell you the level of frustration that I hear. There's so much frustration because you look at the landscape. Utah is so beautiful. It's such an amazing place to live, your quality of life. You go in these diners and cafes, you go into the restaurants, you go into businesses, the people are so kind and hospitable. We have so much to offer in rural Utah. We need somebody that can promote that can take that to the world, that can take that to the country and say, why don't you consider relocating to Utah? Always doing it the way local governments want to do it. Rural Utah is many things to many people. We need to make sure that what works in Kanab isn't going to work in Richfield. We need to identify strategic plans for rural Utah, and then we need to get to work. I can't tell you how passionate I am about this. I will build on our successes, like the one that was mentioned, and I will simultaneously work with rural leaders, and you have some incredible rural leaders to continue to build on them and identify new initiatives.
Okay, Lieutenant Governor, 1 minute.
Well, when Commissioner Bushman approached me to talk about the Rural Online Initiative, I was blown away because it was brilliant and it's exactly what we needed. And we took it a step further. I asked the governor if he would let me run an experiment. If I could take 130 employees from the state office building and have them work from home for 6 months, 3 to 5 days a week, and measure everything they did to see what happened. The results were remarkable. We learned so much. First of all, we took cars off the road on the Wasatch Front. We took pollution out of the air. They were actually happier than their colleagues. We measured their mental health every week to see how they were doing, and their productivity went up 22%. That's huge for the state of Utah. That means we have to build fewer buildings. We need fewer employees. It saves taxpayers millions of dollars. But that's not why I did it. I did it so that people who are part of the online initiative could apply for those jobs from rural Utah. And even better, if you grew up in Sevier County or Sanpete County and you want to move back home and you have one of these jobs, you could take your job and move back home. High-speed internet is the great leveler. It's infrastructure that allows us in rural Utah to connect to the world.
Okay, Greg, 1 minute.
Glad Commissioner Bushman was mentioned there. It's been my entire experience throughout this entire campaign and even in public service. County commissioners know what is needed and what to do, and that's where these great ideas come from. I worked with Representative Mike Noel. I worked with Representative Carl Albrecht on the Rural Online Initiative and Rural Online Initiative 2.0. And we fought for the funding. The legislature builds the budgets. We send policy for the governor to sign or veto. We send budgets that have these priorities in them for the governor to sign or to line item veto. We work very hard on these issues, and as you see, they can proffer a lot of good advantage and a lot of opportunity for rural Utah that you haven't had. But let me just say this, because again, I just want to be clear. I love this initiative, but make no mistake, this is not going to be the only thing or that will drive economic opportunity in the state. We are talking, when you talk about the online initiative, much of that is professional services. We want manufacturing, we want our agriculture to grow, we want our extraction industries to grow. There's many of these that this can be a component of a very diverse economy.
Okay, let us move on. This is for Lieutenant Governor. A lot of rural counties have reported a less than satisfactory engagement with several state agencies. The opinion in much of rural Utah is that many state agencies such as DWR, DWQ, DEQ, and DOPL have turned a blind eye towards rural needs. What will you do to address this issue?
Thank you, Chad. So, look, the nature of government is that government grows. And it's true at the federal level, it's certainly true at the state level. It's an awesome opportunity when we get a new administration to reevaluate everything that's happening at every level of government. But here's the biggest problem. When you talk about a blind eye or not being listened to, and Speaker Hughes mentioned this before, we have a challenge in rural Utah, and our challenge is that there just aren't as many of us as there are on the Wasatch Front. And so when they're dealing with issues and problems, the gravitational pull to the Wasatch Front is incredibly strong. I'll give you an example. A couple months ago, I heard a report that there was a meeting that happened, and in that meeting, somebody said, why should we care about water for our farmers? We can just get our food from other states, right? That's the mentality that we hear far too often from people on the Wasatch Front who don't understand the nature of rural Utah, who don't understand the nature of agriculture and how important it is to our economy. But now I think everybody has learned that, at least with toilet paper and meat, that it doesn't just come from Walmart. These things get made in other places during this pandemic. And it gives us an opportunity to really impress on them how important it is. Now, we have not had a rural governor in decades, and it's my cabinet, and this is something I think that I am the first in history to propose this, will be a geographically diverse cabinet. That makes a difference because far too often I'm the only person in the room from rural Utah. And it's not that they don't care about us, it's just that they don't think about us. And having people in the room from rural Utah can make all the difference. They can bring up something that people haven't thought of. And so by having a geographically diverse cabinet with representations from southern, central, eastern, northern Utah, we can change that and make sure I'm no longer the only person in the room.
Okay, great. Rebuttaling.
So that question is something that I've heard in all of these town hall meetings, cottage meetings, local leader breakfasts and lunches. Here's what's happening. There has grown over time an adversarial relationship with state departments, agencies, divisions, with the public and the people of Utah. This is what happens when you get bureaucratic creep. When I entered the legislature in my first session in 2003, I can honestly say, and they're nice people, but they're the same faces. They're the same people that have been there. They're there over administration after administration. They just grow. It's just what you see. As your governor, I want to go to people that have empathy, that have been on the other side of having to interact with our state agencies, departments, divisions. And I'm going to ask people that were never looking for a state job if they would consider 4 years of their lives to be a department head, to help build these departments and these divisions and agencies. Let's put the service back in public service. We're going to put servant back in public servant. If we don't do it now in an open seat, I don't know when you would. And as governor, that's my commitment to you.
Okay, Thomas?
Well, the reason that people are tired of the overregulation is because government overregulates. We need smaller, more limited government, and we need a new perspective in the governor's office. And so all of those agencies that you listed need to be looked at, and we need to evaluate them and make sure that they're in touch with rural Utah. But look, the buck stops with the leader. If the agencies aren't being responsive, then it's leadership's job to fix the problem. You can't delegate that responsibility. And I know that as a CEO, and I know that as a father, and I know that as a husband. The buck stops with you, and you have to be accountable for your decisions. But let me just say that I think the state government needs to lead by example. We ask we say to rural Utah, you need to diversify your economies, but we don't do the same thing that we ask businesses to do. We don't ask departments of government to relocate to rural Utah. Why is the Division of Natural Resources, why is DNR on the corner of Redwood Road and North Temple? Can anybody tell me that? It'd be a lot better in Richfield, in my opinion. So we need to lead by example and get these departments out of Salt Lake and into rural Utah so they can be connected to rural Utah, and then people will feel more accountable. The employees will feel more accountable to our taxpayers who are financing the operations.
Did you cheat and see my questions? Here's the next one. And Speaker Hughes, this will be yours.
Sorry, Greg.
Okay.
Thanks.
President Trump is in the process of moving headquarters for land-based federal agencies out of Washington and closer to the people that those agencies serve. Currently, we have a state legislator moving legislation forward to decentralize and move state agencies to rural Utah. How do you feel about that, and how would your administration be supportive of such an action?
I'm actually glad you have that question because that resonates with me. It's something we've talked about and spoken about in the campaign trail. It is absolutely, the observation is correct. You do not have to, nor should you, have all of these state departments just shoehorned into one county, one area of the state. The people that work there lose the perspective or never had the perspective of the issues that are confronting the rest of Utah. So Department of Natural Resources, that is not a Salt Lake City department, nor should it be domiciled inside of Salt Lake City. We could go down the line of these areas that could be. I'll tell you, I got a running mate who's going to be the lieutenant governor in an elections office. Why in the world does it have to be primarily in Salt Lake City or at the Capitol? Let the elections office be in St. George. Let it be in Washington County. Let it be closer to other people in this state. Let's have that. We've talked about that. In fact, I think it was a condition on saying yes, that I had to actually mull that over and decide to do that. That idea that the people that you serve, to be a public servant, you have to interact with and have that service in your heart and your mind when you're doing it, you can't do it in a vacuum. You can't do it in an insular way. That's what happens. That's why, frankly, our state the framers of our state constitution did not want a legislative branch that was full-time. They wanted you in the middle of the winter, an agrarian calendar, for the legislative branch to come in about 7 weeks, shortest legislative session in America, get in, kill bills, pass bills, approve a budget, and then what? Go out back to the communities in which you live and live with the laws that you have passed and the budgets you've approved because it brings you empathy. That is a powerful tool in public service. As we see these departments, these divisions, these agencies who make these decisions, when people feel like there's an adversarial relationship, I know no greater solution to help that communication be enhanced, to see communication get better, than having those divisions, departments, agencies in the areas where they deal with Utahns most frequently.
Okay. First rebuttal goes to Thomas.
State leaders are not doing what we're asking businesses to do. We need to relocate these government agencies. I'm glad that my opponents are finally agreeing with me. I've been saying this the whole campaign, but there's been so many missed opportunities, and it gets back to the question that I asked you earlier. All these great ideas that they have, for 16 years, they've been in the top 3 spots in state government. Why didn't they happen when they were there? Why are we just hearing these promises now in an election year? I'll give you a perfect example of a missed opportunity. And I hear it all over the state. And the other night, my opponents defended their position on it. Why did we build a prison in a swamp in Salt Lake City? I've had multiple county commissioners call me the last 2 days and say, we wanted it. We had the land donated. We had the water. We could have built the hospital they needed. They could have changed the requirement. We could have had those jobs. But instead, we built a prison in a swamp in Salt Lake City. It's 400 beds less than they promised. It's $300 or $400 million more than they promised. And now they stand on this stage and tell you they're going to do it in an election year. They haven't done it. It's a missed opportunity, and I want to change it as governor.
Do we get to rebut on that,
Spencer.
or do we wait a turn?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. So the answer is yes. This is a great way that we can move some of those jobs off the Wasatch Front into rural Utah. We've actually done this. We've been working on this. The Department of Workforce Services has been moving employees out to the Uinta Basin and to some others as a test case to see if we can make that work. And so far, it's actually working. It's working very well, which gives us an opportunity to do this with others. I would also submit the Department of Agriculture is one that could be moved off the Wasatch Front and should be moved off the Wasatch Front. Again, if there is a way to save taxpayer dollars, which is critical in government, and also provide jobs for those that are needed, we will be far better off as a state. And as governor, I'm committed to doing that, and I'm willing to yield my time to the speaker.
Can I rebut what I heard just there? Okay, let me just talk about that, because he did mention that we did talk about this. The prison move. It is true that when you look at the population of that prison, we were looking at the employee base that can work there. The volunteerism is actually a critical component. The volunteers that are able to come in and be in that area, and the number of volunteers that we depend on as a state is a big number. You have to also be close to and adjacent to hospitals, medical facilities of a certain standard, and you also have to have courts and then the families that would visit those that are incarcerated. So there were some limitations as to where that would go, but make no mistake, Gunnison, it works. And when you have those size facilities, you absolutely look in the rural areas. But I'd say even more important than that, how many people here understand and appreciate jail contracting that the state works with, our local jails. It's an absolutely critical component of our correctional facility for the state. I want to see that enhanced. We worked very hard working on jail contracting in to work on making sure we have our inmates there. And the 2 years I've been gone, I don't know if that jail contracting commitment's been as strong. So there's a plan, but it's not just one prison in one place.
I'm going to ask you to yield your response time on the next question.
Sure.
So that we can stay on schedule. Okay, this goes to Thomas, and here we go. Elk are not native to much of the rangeland of central Utah, but have been developed into extremely large herds. The DWR loves these herds because they bring lots of revenue, and especially big bull tags bringing in big revenues to the agency for projects to improve vegetation, to raise more elk, to further build the herds. However, these herds are negatively impacting a large number of ranching families that have owned these grazing lands for generations that are now being consumed by the state's animals. What will your administration do to correct this problem?
Well, first, let me just say on the prison, I have to use some of my time on that. There was nothing that Speaker Hughes said that could have prevented the prison or should have prevented the prison from being in rural Utah. You have plenty of volunteers. You have plenty of resources. We spent $300 or $400 million more than we should have to build a prison that was 400 beds less. We could have upgraded a hospital in rural Utah if we needed to, or we could have just changed the requirement. If you look for reasons not to relocate business and state government to rural Utah, you will find it. And that's what the Speaker just did, with all due respect, and Lieutenant Governor did it the other night. And I want you to judge us by our merits and our ideas, but I want you to understand that there's a difference between us. And if you keep electing the same people, you're going to get the same promises with no results. I'm a different candidate that will deliver for you. We could have had the state prison in rural Utah if we wanted it. It didn't happen, and it didn't happen for whatever reason. I still would like to hear the explanation because I don't accept the one that I just heard. Now, I'm an elk hunter. I'm a big game hunter. And let me tell you, I understand this habitat restoration. I understand big game management. I'm a fan of big game management because, like I said earlier, I drew my tag, and I'm really excited about that. I can't wait to go with my son, who's sitting on the front row, on our elk hunt this fall. So we need to make sure that we are preserving our big game populations. And we need to do that by making sure that there's plenty of habitat there for them. But the biggest threat right now to the elk population, Chad, and you know this, is the wolf. I will not let the wolves from Idaho and Colorado invade our state and kill our big game populations. Right now in Colorado, their governor is considering or is in the process of introducing wolves on the western slope. They will be in Utah, and they will decimate our elk herds in Utah. We cannot allow that to happen. I will stand up to the governor of Colorado, and I will stand up for our big game populations. They're important to our lifestyle, they're important to our economy, and they're important to Utahns. I will not let wolves invade Utah as governor.
Okay, Lieutenant Governor, do you have a different perspective on this?
Yeah, so look, so often we get presented with a false choice, and this is one of those false choices. We're being told that we have to choose between the sportsmen and the ag producers in the state, and that's just a false choice. Again, I come from a family of ag producers. It's the same people that are running their sheep, running their cows on these ranches, are the same ones that are drawing out for those tags and that are the sportsmen. We don't have to choose between them, but we do have to do a better job of managing the resources that we have in this state. And that means that we have to work closely with our ag producers. I have uncles right now that are running thousands of heads of sheep on the Manti LaSalle, and the elk are a problem. They get down into our farm, they get it down into my in-laws' ranch, and they decimate fences. They eat through the alfalfa, and it causes problems. It causes severe losses. And so we have to do a better job of managing those. We don't have to choose between them, but we do have to work together, and as governor, I will bring those two sides together.
Okay, that's right, you gave up your time on this one. All right, next question. This goes to...
All my time, I didn't get 10 seconds? Okay, no, I'm just kidding. I won't be a problem.
Okay.
He told me that he agrees with me.
I'm trying to be fair,
That's
okay?
Fair. That's fair.
The state, this goes to the Lieutenant Governor for answer. The state of Utah has clamped down so tightly on private trappers to the point that they are doing very little to affect the predator population. Yet, the state has done a very poor job of controlling the predator population through state agencies. As governor, would you be willing to take on this challenge and return private trapping to a profitable enterprise that can effectively assist in statewide predator control? Again, I'm suspicious that you hacked our questions.
I swear.
Okay. Lieutenant Governor.
I demand an investigation.
I'm telling you, it's a sign. It's a sign.
No, yeah, the answer is yes. As somebody as a kid who worked with trappers in our local area, and I've shot my fair share of coyotes in this state, and it is a problem. The predator problem is growing. Again, as somebody who has family in the sheep industry, we see this over and over again. We have to work together with the private sector. This is one of those symbiotic relationships. The state doesn't have to solve all of our problems. The state doesn't have to do all of this. We should be able to work with our local trappers to be able to increase their ability to make a living. Again, we talk about, we often complain about the federal government and what's happened there, but when state government is the problem, then we can make those changes. It's so much easier. We work with the legislature, and again, this is local governments understand this better. We criticize the federal government for coming into the state of Utah and telling us how to do our business, and then far too often in Salt Lake City, they turn around and tell those of us in rural Utah how to do our business, and we know better. As a former mayor, as a former county commissioner, I understand that you get this, you really do, and we should allow counties to work with our agencies to determine what they want to do, what they want to see, what kind of industry they want to see in their state, and yeah, let's get our predator, let's get more deprivation tags out there, and let's get people out there working to get these predators out here. We talked about the wolves already. I don't know if we're going to get a wolf question. I don't want to jump on that since Thomas already did, but he's absolutely right. We did have a wolf sighting in the state of Utah in the past week. We're working to make sure that that doesn't happen. This is absolutely critical, people, for our ag producers in the state. We cannot allow the wolves to make a comeback here in the state of Utah.
Okay. Your turn.
I love these town hall meetings that we have. I learn so much, and I learn it not just from a public policy level, but the stories of families and the circumstances that people have, businesses, families, whatnot. Heard some amazing stories on the campaign trail. Trappers feel harassed. They feel harassed by our state, by the regulations they're supposed to adhere to. Had another story where someone said they spotted a wolf, and it's a pretty serious deal, and they went to it was a federal ranger, and they said, "Hey, look, we saw a wolf." And they said, "Absolutely not. It's a coyote." "No, I'm telling you, we saw a wolf. It's a wolf." And they said, "It's a coyote." They would not listen to what they said. They shot this animal, and it was a wolf, and this person was arrested for having done it. After they went to the ranger, after they tried to say what they were seeing, what was going on, the criminal penalties, the adversarial relationship is absolutely wrong. It's so counterintuitive. And again, you don't know what you don't know. And so rural Utah, and as we see these issues come up, and when you feel that heavy hand of the law, we have got to make sure that that's better, because all government's supposed to be are public servants to you, the people, to make it right. So there's much to do on that front.
Thomas?
Well, the coyote is the biggest predator problem that we have in the state of Utah, and so I'll talk about bear and mountain lion in a minute. But this year, in 2018, it was just reported that 20,500 sheep were killed by coyotes in the state of Utah. That's in 2018, up 25%. We have to be sure that we're controlling the coyote population and not just going after the wolves when they show up, but the coyote population does need to be controlled and maintained. I understand that issue. Another 8,000 sheep were killed by bears and mountain lions in that same year, just to give you a perspective of which predator is doing most of the damage. So the deprivation tags with mountain lions and the way we're managing bear seems to be working. The way we're managing a coyote needs to be enhanced and improved, and we need to continue to manage that so that our predators are not killing our livestock and our poultry and our wildlife, and that we have good balance in our ecosystem. And I understand that as governor, and I will support those efforts.
Okay, we have one final question, and we're going to modify this. Gina, if you would be so good as to just make 2 minutes for each of these answers, and then we will move on to our final rounds of questioning. Okay, are you in favor of the planned teardown of the state office building that the state has invested $36 million on in the last 10 years so they can build a $165 million parking garage and a museum? This was a submitted question, and we're going to make this the last one. Give each of you 2 minutes to talk about the topic, and it starts with Greg Hughes.
Yeah, I think that was a beautiful idea. We live in very different times now. I think that the idea of tearing down that state office building, you could have argued in the best of times where that was the best use of taxpayer dollars. But what we have as a reality in the budget right now is that the legislature is going to go into session right now, and I keep hearing the word cut, but they're not going to be cutting anything. Money's not arriving. Tax revenue is not arriving because commerce and economic activity is not occurring. So any of that idea of bonding or cutting, tearing down a building and spending more money for more of that, that is not going to be the highest best use of finite state taxpayer dollars going forward. So that issue, I think that you don't even have to have a candidate running for governor to tell you where we stand on that issue to see what's going to happen with that issue. I can tell you, having been in the legislature for 16 years, that idea has been officially mothballed. They're never going to do that given the times that we're in right now. $1.3 billion are going to be cut from this budget. That's before any new year and new fiscal budget, which we'll see some shortfall. But let's talk about the heart and soul of that question. When you are spending taxpayer dollars, and look, one of the great things that's going to happen in our time, we've seen that in a recession. This has been an artificial shutdown, but you always can sharpen your pencil on state revenues, how they're spent. There's always a race, and there's always more demand than there is dollars to appropriate. But you're going to find a refiner's fire happening now and going into 2021, and ideas and projects like that might have sounded good in times of plenty, but what it does is it wakes you up as a public servant, as a legislature, as a governor, that we have to be very careful with how we appropriate those dollars and how you're getting the greatest return on those dollars. So that is an exercise that is ongoing, I know, right now with our legislature. You're going to see it go on, and probably, and sadly, maybe the most historic budget gaps we'll have ever seen, especially if we stay in this nonsense color code of yellows and greens. Red, white, and blue, folks. We got to get back to work, and if you do that, you'll have more money, and hopefully you still don't fund this building.
Well, we enter very uncertain and tough economic times. Now is probably not the time to be spending this kind of money on this kind of capital project, and that matches my economic plan that I put out over a month ago, I believe, called Jumpstart. You can go to my website, wrightutah.com. One of the things that I called for in my economic recovery plan was freezing capital projects. When you're a business owner and you go through tough times, there's two things you do right off the bat. Number one, you freeze any spending on capital projects that is not essential or critical. And number two, you freeze hiring so that you can protect the employees you have and pay them a fair market wage. So that's what we should do as a state government. We should freeze spending on all capital projects, including the $300 million that we have proposed to be spent on college campuses this year. $300 million to build new buildings on college campuses. There's plenty of places for state government to cut spending. I know it's difficult. I'm not saying it's easy. I applaud our legislature for their hard work and legislative leadership. But the legislature will do, I have no doubt, what families and businesses have done in this state, and that is cut spending, tighten their belt, do more with less, and identify places where we can find efficiencies. See, this is a perfect opportunity to elect a business executive with political experience, somebody that's a proven conservative leader that can go in and look at financial statements and work collaboratively through a very complex budgeting process to make sure the proper cuts are made and that they're done adequately, so we're not hurting the employees that they're affecting. But I have looked at financial statements in my career for the last 12 years. That's all I've done as an executive in managing my business, looking at profit and loss statements, looking at balance sheets. I know how to do this. I can use those executive skills that I've honed over 12 years to save the taxpayers money, to get government doing more with less. What more of a perfect time is there than now to elect somebody who can go in and do that? We know that there's inefficiency in government. We just need new people that can go in and see it because they have a keen eye and they haven't been there before.
Okay, Spencer, 2 minutes.
Thank you. So we've talked a lot about problems that are out there today, and we should. That's the nature of these things. But there are some things that are going really right with Utah, and I think it's important that we mention some of those. And I want to credit Speaker Hughes and those who have followed him in the legislature, working with the Governor's Office of Management and Budget, for the way that we have prepared our state for times just like these. Now, yes, we all agree. In times like this, you don't build building like that. There's just no reason to do that. But there's some things that you need to know. So first of all, we don't spend all of our money every year. We're very careful with that. And the rainy day funds that you've heard of are very robust, almost $1 billion in rainy day funds, and that's something that Utahns can be proud of. But there's so much more than that. We have these working rainy day funds, which means that every year we take ongoing money, the legislature and the governor's office, we take ongoing money and we spend it on one-time projects, which means that it's there if we need it in case there's a downturn like this. Let me give you a quick example of one of those things that happens. So we were using that money to help finish the prison and to build some road projects in the state. As soon as this crisis hit, we were able to say, okay, every other state would bond for those types of projects. We were paying cash for it. Now, let's go ahead and go to the bond markets, bond for that, and use that cash to fill in these gaps that we're seeing because of the downturn in the economy. We were the first state in the nation to get to the bond markets. We got a rate of 1.156%, the lowest in our state's history. Okay, and the reason that matters, we got our AAA bond rating as a state renewed in the middle of this crisis because we do manage our affairs in the right way. And that's what we'll do. Let me just finish with this. I was a county commissioner when the Great Recession hit. And we got a message saying we have no choice but to raise taxes. I emailed back and said, we're not going to raise taxes. We're going to trim what we're doing as government. We're going to tighten our belt. We're going to balance our budget. And that's exactly what we did. And that's what I'll do as governor.
Okay, we have reached the end of our time. And we are going to allow each of you 1 minute to say whatever you want. If there's something that's been on your mind during this debate, you get to say whatever you want. We will start by the previous draw that we did before. It will start with the Lieutenant Governor. Go ahead.
I guess what I would say, I thought we would have a wildfire question here. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a problem in this state, and with the federal government overreach, I'm going to share a quick story. In 2012, we had one of the worst fire seasons in our state's history. In Sanpete County, we had the Wood Hollow fire, the biggest in our county's history. That fire was just getting out. We had a Type 2 federal team. We had air support. We had airplanes. We had helicopters. We had 800 firefighters on the ground. When I noticed a plume of smoke coming from what I thought was Sanpete County, it turned out to be Emery County, on the Manti-LaSalle. I talked to the federal team and they said, we can have that fire out, it's 2 acres. We can have that fire out in less than an hour. Let us go. We talked to the Forest Service and they said, stand down, let that fire burn. That turned out to be the Seeley fire, at the time the most expensive fire in our state's history. Okay? It decimated one of the most beautiful canyons, Huntington Canyon. It destroyed a blue ribbon fishery. And for years and years, it cost the state millions of dollars every year to try to keep that road open, to clean up the water for the people in Emery County. We have to take back our lands.
Okay. Speaker Hughes.
Thank you. A minute, a lot to say. President Trump, I support him. I don't just support him in certain audiences. I support him every single day. I did when he was a candidate. I did through every witch hunt, through every impeachment farce. I do in this campaign. I lead with it. Some people say, why do you talk about it so much? Because I don't hear it enough. I don't hear it enough from candidates in every audience and at every opportunity to say that we support this president. There's never been a president that's done more for this country, but especially for this state, that's come into this state and helped this state in ways that I don't think he ever gets appreciated for. This president and what he's done for our state with a governor that knows and appreciates that fact, we're going to do even greater things. We've done a lot, we'll do more. Let me tell you, these constitutional decisions that were made in this government shutdown, in a climate of fear with a virus we've never confronted, we've let a lot go by us. We didn't talk about in this debate, but we can never make the same mistakes we made this time with these constitutional liberties taken away from us and our ability to work and provide for our families taken away. Lastly, with 4 seconds left, we are the ticket that represents this entire state, and this whole state depends on you to see its prosperity. We hope to earn your support.
Mr. Wright.
Rural Utah is fantastic. I love rural Utah. I love getting to know you. There's still so much to learn and there's still so much to do. Congressman Bishop and I want to do that work. We're hard workers. We're honest. We believe in an honest day's work. We will be here regularly to meet with you. We will have you to Salt Lake when necessary. You will not be left behind in a Wright Bishop administration. Ask yourself this question. Ask yourself this simple question. They've had 16 years to have the power to do basically whatever they've wanted. If you're satisfied with how rural Utah is going, and you're okay with the direction that we've had in this fantastic economic run-up, you have 3 great options in this race. But if you're a little dissatisfied and you're ready for a change and you'd like to see things improve, then there's a new game in town. A new person with new energy and new ideas, with an experienced running mate, and together we can make rural Utah the very best it can be. I'm Thomas Wright. I ask you sincerely for your vote, and I hope you have a great night. Thank you for having me.
Okay, that concludes everything, except if we get a minute, we're going to come back and do a few lightning round questions. I would like to take the time to express my gratitude for the support that has come from the community to make this event happen. You know, it's really hard to put these things on, and it's really hard to get the information collected. The questions submitted today for this debate did not come from me. They were collected from rural governments and rural community members from around the state, and we honed them into the top 13. There were probably 60 of them. We do want to thank our sponsors. A little bit of money goes a long way. This was an expensive undertaking to actually buy Primetime Fringe an hour and a half of non-commercial or uninterrupted time. We'd like to thank our sponsors, the Utah Association of Counties, Representative Carl Albrecht, Representative Phil Lyman, Representative Mike Schultz, the Utah Rural Electric Association, Representative Francis Gibson, Beaver County, Garfield County, Jorgensen Power Sports, Milo and Connie Medley, Circleville Fly and Tackle, Emery County Commission, Stanton Glebe, Commissioner Tudor Ogden, Commissioner Darren Bushman, Commissioner Scott Dalton, Circle Valley Farms, Wolverine Fuels, Barney Trucking, Larson's Ace Hardware, ERA Realtors, Caldwell Banker, Alvey Lumber, State Bank of Southern Utah, Robinson's Transport, Deseret Power, and Patrick Painter. You know, little contributions can accomplish big things, and we appreciate the effort of these people to make this event happen tonight. Please give them a round of applause. Please also extend a round of applause to these gentlemen. After there are a variance of opinions, and there are people in this audience that are in everybody's camp, but I can safely say that all four people running for governor, we're okay whoever wins. That's my opinion. So I would like to finish this event by telling you that we appreciate your coming and joining us tonight. We thank you for your commitment to be informed voters. We also appreciate our distinguished candidates. This took a lot for them to get down here and take time for this debate. They've been debated out. I mean, it seems like 2 or 3 a week at the going rate right now. So thank you for making this a debate you chose to attend. Rural Utah thanks you for it. Our event organizers have asked that you please remain seated until your row is called for departure because of COVID issues. The ushers will indicate row by row a safe departure for the auditorium. We will clear the seats closest to the exit first, work our way down to the other side of the auditorium. If we can do this expeditiously and there's no chit-chat in the foyer, please make your way to the outside. If you want to congregate, please remember social distancing and proper grouping rules. For those of you who have follow-up questions for Mr. Wright, I believe somewhere in the building he has rented a room here, and you are welcome to, in small numbers, go there.
In the library. The library.
And there you go. And visit with him. This concludes our debate for tonight, and we thank you for joining us. Remember that there are a lot of choices in life. Being engaged in your government is one of them. If you've tuned in for this debate, whether it be on radio, whether it be on TV, whether it be online, thank you. Make sure that you get your ballots in the mail. You have till June 30th. Voting is the most important thing you can do as a citizen. Thank you and good night from Richfield. No handshaking, just elbow bumping.